Good evening again. My name is Brandy Jenkins, and I'm with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to be here with us this evening, either virtually or in person. For those joining us virtually, I wanted to run through some logistical information first. In our virtual space, all microphones have been muted and web cameras have been disabled, so there is no need to look for those buttons. We have also disabled meeting chat for today's session. Instead, we will be using the Q&A button so that you may privately submit questions. If you are having trouble accessing the features in Zoom, please reach out to some of my colleagues behind the scenes using the Q&A feature. You can find the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. For our phone audience, if you are listening on your phone and cannot access the Q&A function, press *9 to let us know you have a question. Once we identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number, press *6 to unmute. Again, press *9 to let us know you have a question and *6 to unmute. We will repeat phone questions so attendees in the room can know the question if necessary. Thank you again, and we are about to start our session on ethylene oxide in the Memphis community. For those of us just joining here in person and virtually, I want to thank you again for being here. Today, we'll be covering 2 proposed EPA actions to reduce ethylene oxide risk at commercial sterilization and healthcare facilities. These actions, if finalized, would apply to the sterilization services of Tennessee Commercial Sterilizer Facility here in Memphis. As stated earlier, I'm Brandy Jenkins, the Public Affairs Director for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Region 4 Office, otherwise known as our Southeast Office. I'm the moderator for today's meeting. First, I want to acknowledge all of you in this room and all of you joining us virtually. Your continued engagement, your continued conversation, your continued contact with us is a big part of the work we do, and we sincerely appreciate it. You all are our boots on the ground. You tell us what's going on, so thank you. We also want to acknowledge the members of the local elected officials, members of the City Council, the County Commission, our partners at the Shelby County Health Department, and the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. We are here today because our mission at EPA is to protect human health and the environment. And because EPA is taking a series of actions to reduce health risks from a specific chemical, ethylene oxide, that is both a source of air pollution in America and a source of potential risk to workers who work with this chemical. We are grateful to be with you today. We were here in October, and this is a follow-up to that meeting. At the time, we committed to being there in October and to coming back, so here we are. In that October meeting, we covered risks to communities due to ethylene oxide exposure, and we let you all know about some steps and solutions that EPA was working on to minimize those risks. Today, we'll again share some of that background information that we shared in the fall about these health risks and the significant steps EPA is taking to protect workers who are exposed to this chemical, as well as people who live, work, play, or go to school or daycare near facilities that use it. And we'll also talk about how you can get involved in providing input on EPA's actions. Both because it can be hard to learn about potential health risks you might be facing, and because some of the information for how EPA is addressing this risk can be pretty technical, this is a tough issue to communicate. And I want to acknowledge that this is not necessarily an easy conversation we are going to have here today. We had an earlier session at 10 a.m., and this was a big part of the discussion. The technical nature of the information we're presenting and how it is delivered. And again, we want to hear from you. As an agency, We are committed to meaningful community engagement and discussion on what environmental contaminants are impacting communities. That is why we are here today. We strongly believe that this communication is important and that for us to best protect health, we need to share the information we have with you all. It is also important that we do that in a way that is understandable and that helps inform decisions you might be making about your own lives. This is part of why we have a lot of time set aside today to take questions from you. If we say things that are hard to follow, we speak with too much technical language or jargon, or we just don't cover things that are important to you, please let us know and we will take the time to explain things in a different way. Before we begin our presentations, I want to take some time to explain in more detail how the question and answer sessions will work. We're going to answer questions at different points this evening. The first opportunity will be after all the presentations are completed, and then we'll take questions again at the end. So we'll take them both here in the room and virtually. As I said earlier, for those of you online, please feel free to submit a written question at any time using the question and answer feature on Zoom, which is one of the buttons at the bottom of your screen. For those of you in the room, we have microphones available, but if you do not want to come to the microphone, we have note cards for you to write your question. Brenda is in the back and she has note cards and she will be happy to bring them to you. Our question and answer session is we will only respond to questions during the question and answer session about the risk we are communicating to you, some of the background information we're presenting. As I mentioned, we're also here to talk about 2 proposed actions that EPA is putting forward. Those proposed actions are in the middle of a public comment period. And part of our reason for being here tonight is to encourage you to submit formal comments on those proposed actions. We are going to go through several times this evening ways that you are able to make those comments for the record. We are going to do our best to answer as many questions as possible. That may mean we group similar questions together. It also may mean that I ask some of the panelists to clarify or add detail if one of their answers I feel was unclear and needed to be explained again. If you feel that your question is important and we didn't get to it, or you feel the answer to your question wasn't clear or quite what you were looking for, please feel free to reach out to us directly or approach us after the session and we will be more than happy to engage in a broader discussion with you. This is an informational meeting and we will do our best to answer your general questions. Again, if you wish to have comments on the proposed actions, we encourage you to submit them on the record. You are going to hear this several times tonight on repeat, so please, again, we encourage you to submit comments for the record. Okay, so with those lengthy instructions out of the way, let's get started. I'd like to introduce those of us, my colleagues sitting up here today, so you know who's speaking with you. We have a panel of experts, including Caroline Freeman, who is our Air and Radiation Division Director, Seneca Anderson, one of our environmental engineers and technical experts in the Air and Radiation Division, and Aaron Jones, who is the region's emerging contaminants expert or coordinator out of Region 4. And then to my left is Allison Wise, who is helping group the questions and make sure that we're able to answer them in a timely fashion and that we are responsive to your questions. We also have technical experts from the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry on the line. So if there's a health-based question, we have our colleague, Peter Kowalski, who is on here, and he will be able to help us respond to those health questions. So give us a little flexibility as we navigate between the virtual platform and being able to convey the response verbally. We also have Dr. Michelle Taylor from the Shelby County Health Department, who is joining us virtually and will make a statement and provide some remarks before our first question and answer session. I'm going to turn the mic over to Caroline Freeman at this time, who will begin our official presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brandy. Good evening, everyone. As Brandy stated, I am Caroline Freeman, and I am the Director for the Air and Radiation Division with the United States Environmental Protection Agency out of Atlanta. First, let me say thank you to each one of you for coming out this evening to this session. At EPA, it is our mission to protect human health and the environment. So I want to go ahead and reiterate why we are here today. Okay, you've already heard that there is pollution in this community, and it is coming from an air toxic that is called ethylene oxide, which we often refer to as EtO. Last fall, we held a community meeting here in Memphis to share information on the long-term health risks posed by the inhalation of uncontrolled ethylene oxide emissions from the Sterilization Services of Tennessee facility, which is located on 2396 Florida Street in South Memphis. We're here again today to talk with you about the recently proposed actions that EPA have taken to reduce risk and to encourage each one of you to comment on these proposed actions. What is ethylene oxide? Well, let's review briefly what we know about ethylene oxide and its uses. Occasionally, people call this chemical, as I said earlier, EO as well. So you may see EtO, you may see EO, or simply ethylene oxide. It is all talking about the same exact chemical. You usually cannot smell ethylene oxide in the amounts that we find in the air near facilities in your community, because ethylene oxide is a gas, it's odorless and it's colorless, but it is flammable at certain temperatures. Now, the uses of ethylene oxide. Ethylene oxide has two main purposes. And first, in the chemical manufacturing process, ethylene oxide is used as a building block to make things like antifreeze, and in some processes, plastic bottles and other consumer goods. We're not concerned about a risk to you from this type of use in this community. The second is the use of ethylene oxide in the commercial sterilization industry at facilities like Sterilization Services of Tennessee, which is located here in Memphis. At Sterilization Services of Tennessee, ethylene oxide is used as a sterilant for medical equipment and supplies for the dental and medical industry. For this conversation, the ethylene oxide of concern is coming out of Sterilization Services of Tennessee facility as air pollution only. We have no indication that ethylene oxide is being discharged into the water or on the ground in any way that would cause risk. Now, I want to talk to you about lifetime exposures and really what that means when we talk about regulatory risk. We have learned that ethylene oxide is more toxic than we previously thought, and that it can cause cancer when people are exposed over long periods of time. Specifically, ethylene oxide can cause breast cancer and cancers of the blood and lymphatic system. Those are the kinds of cancers that EPA was able to identify as a result of studies that it has done. By long periods, we mean when people who live near these facilities breathe in ethylene oxide every day for 24 hours of that time frame, 7 days a week until age 70. That's how conservative this risk model is that we're talking about today. Now, some special considerations I want to inform you of about risk, but at the same time, I want to point out that some people are more at risk from the exposure to ethylene oxide than others. Why, you may ask? Either because they spend more time in the area where these risks exist. For instance, this could apply to workers or those who live nearby and or, go to school in those areas. It can happen because for some reason, some individuals' bodies are more susceptible than others. And we also have learned that children and babies are more vulnerable to ethylene oxide exposure. And because we know that children are more vulnerable, we explicitly consider that in our analysis. As far as our proposed actions, we are here again today so that we can tell you about these proposals that the EPA recently issued to deal with this risk. We have proposed 3 separate actions, and these actions are designed to lower emissions of ethylene oxide into the air and reduce the health risk that it poses. We believe the best way to reduce the risk of ethylene oxide is to reduce its usage and to reduce the amount that is being emitted into the environment. First, we have proposed more stringent standards under the nation's pesticides control law, the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, or what we commonly refer to it as, in the acronym phase, FIFRA. These more stringent requirements will apply to all use of ethylene oxide as a pesticide or sterilizing agent and or designed to provide greater protection to workers and communities. And the orange box is the second action that we have proposed. And this proposed action strengthens our existing federal regulation that govern air emissions from commercial scale sterilizers like Sterilization Services of Tennessee. These proposed changes are designed to significantly reduce air emissions from these facilities and reduce risk to the surrounding communities. And the third, in the blue oval on the screen, action that we have proposed to strengthen our existing federal regulations that govern air emissions from chemical manufacturing plants. We won't be focusing on that proposed action today because there are no chemical manufacturing facilities here in Memphis that utilizes ethylene oxide. Seneca Anderson and Aaron Jones to my left will be sharing some more detail about the first 2 proposal actions in a few minutes and how those proposed actions will reduce ethylene oxide usage and minimize emissions. Now I'm going to share a little more detail about the analysis we have completed and what it tells us about these facilities. EPA scientists analyzed the best information and data available, some of which were collected from this facility in 2021 as well as 2022. Then EPA combined that data with other local information like weather patterns and also the location of homes. Using those factors, the EPA was able to model the risk from ethylene oxide. I want to note that EPA's analysis only reflects your potential exposure risk related to ethylene oxide from Sterilization Services of Tennessee. So the risk that I'm sharing information about today is an additional or an incremental long-term risk of getting certain cancers from ethylene oxide that we have modeled. To estimate risk from a given chemical, we need to know three things at the Environmental Protection Agency. We need to know we need to know how toxic, first, the chemical is and how close the source is located. We also need to know how much of the chemical is in the air and how long throughout a person's life he or she may have been exposed to that chemical. Because EPA's analysis must be protective of human health, we use estimates of how long people are exposed that are on the extremely high end. For exposure to ethylene oxide, we are talking about people who live by very nearby Sterilization Services of Tennessee. Additionally, for community exposure, we assume that people spend all of their time in the area where the risk exists. Specifically, we assume that for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from age birth to age 70, individuals are breathing in ethylene oxide in the area where there is risk. Those might not be realistic assumptions because almost everyone leaves their home at some point. Even though those assumptions are extremely conservative that we're making, it does ensure that we are being protective of the public's health for everyone, even in the most extreme situation. For worker exposures, we assume exposure 8 hours a day, 240 days a year for a period of 35 years. And we also take into account any worker protections that are in place, such as personal protective equipment. Now I want to talk to you about the map that's on the screen. The gradient map that's displayed on this slide is used to show ethylene oxide risk from Sterilization Services of Tennessee. I want to say that this is a modeled risk. I also want to preference that we believe that there is elevated risk to people who live near Sterilization Services of Tennessee. But I also want to be clear that there's also potential risk to people who work in these facilities or who work or go to school nearby these facilities. As you're looking at the map on the screen, I want to point out a few features. The dark orange box on the map is the actual facility itself. The lighter orange area is industrial areas surrounding that facilities where other folks may go to work. And the blue area includes residential areas where risks are at or above 100 in a million. Impacts from this plume that you see on this gradient map extends south to East Pebbles Road, north to South Parkway East, 250 feet west of the intersection of Interstate 55 and Riverport Road, and east to South Lauderdale Street. There's also a map that shows these boundaries in the back right corner of the sanctuary, if you want to see that map as well. In the blue area, the darker shading reflects higher risk and the lighter shading lower risk, albeit still at or above 100 in a million. Note that as you move away from the facility, the blue shading gets lighter, meaning that the risk gets lower. I want to note that there is some uncertainty in these estimates as both operations at the facility and weather can change, but these are the best health protective estimates we have available. At EPA, we use 100 in a million as our benchmark for identifying whether risk levels are considered higher and are of concern to EPA. When we say 100 in a million, we are saying that we estimate ethylene oxide exposure could contribute to an increase of 100 cancer cases if 1 million people were exposed at the concentrated level for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from birth to age 70. We start our calculations at birth because we want to make sure that we are protective of children. Under the Clean Air Act, we focus on risk where people live. We are also concerned about risk to workers or others who might spend part of their time in the light yellow area or non-residential area and in the facility itself. But for this analysis, the EPA has focused its modeled risk on residential areas. We will share more on actions that EPA is taking to address risk to workers and others who spend increased time in these non-residential areas near facilities in a moment. The information we're sharing today and that we have posted on the web is all based on information that the EPA has collected from Sterilization Services of Tennessee about their use of ethylene oxide and quality control with our partners at Shelby County Health Department. In many areas, several facilities have already taken steps to reduce ethylene oxide pollution, and others are planning to do more to reduce their ethylene oxide fugitive releases. At EPA, we are very concerned about the risk in this community. We have also learned that ethylene oxide is not a chemical that lasts in the environment for a long period of time, meaning that it dissipates or disappears rather quickly. Again, today, our focus is on Sterilization Services of Tennessee, which is located at 2396 Florida Street here in Memphis, Tennessee. The facility has been utilizing ethylene oxide to sterilize medical supplies and equipment since 1976. I want to say thank you for your attention today. We will take questions at the end of all of the presentations. And at this time, I will turn to our moderator, Brandy Jenkins, to share additional information and introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Before we get too far down this evening and while Seneca is getting ready for his portion, I want to thank Pastor Fuller. I saw him and then he disappeared on me again, but I want to thank Pastor Fuller and his wonderful team here at Bloomfield Baptist Church for welcoming us this evening so we could host these meetings today. And so again, thank you for that. And everybody has just been so wonderful. So as Caroline gave us a little glimpse of the background on ethylene oxide, I want to make sure that our virtual audience and our phone audience have what they need to be able to ask questions. So if you're on the phone and you need to ask a question, please press *9. And if you're having technical issues, we'll identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number, and then you should press *6 to unmute. Again, the formal comment for the 2 proposed actions must be submitted in writing, either online or through a stamped envelope. We have labeled envelopes and forms in the back for you, and we will walk through how to do that. Okay, at this time, we're going to continue on with our next presentation, and I'll now turn things over to Seneca Anderson, who is an environmental engineer and technical expert in our air and radiation division. Seneca.
Thank you, Brandy. And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you all for the opportunity to be here today with you. As Brandy said, my name is Seneca Anderson. I am in the Regulatory Communities and Air Toxics section in the Air and Radiation Division at EPA's Region 4 office. The short version of that is that I am an environmental engineer on Caroline's staff. And today I will be talking to you about a little more technical aspects of the proposed action under the Clean Air Act and how it will reduce ethylene oxide emissions from commercial sterilizer facilities like the Sterilization Services of Tennessee facility here in Memphis. As Caroline mentioned earlier, EPA is proposing 3 actions to reduce emissions of ethylene oxide. I will be continuing Caroline's overview of the proposed rule for commercial sterilizers under the Clean Air Act. That's the orange circle there in the middle. And I will provide some more technical details on how this proposed regulation will reduce ethylene oxide emissions from these types of facilities. Next slide, please. Okay. All right, and just a little background to start is the Clean Air Act is a federal law, and that is what gives EPA the authority to regulate sources of air pollution. In a moment, my colleague is going to talk about another action that EPA is taking under a different federal law. And this is just to say that EPA is using all the tools in our toolbox, which is all the laws that give us the authority to regulate air pollution. What I am talking about today is under the Clean Air Act. And specifically, the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990 authorized EPA to regulate sources of a subset of air toxics called hazardous air pollutants. There is a specific list of these pollutants, and EtO is on that list. So EPA is using its authority under the Clean Air Act to propose this regulation to further reduce EtO emissions from commercial sterilizers. EPA first put regulations for these types of facilities on the books in 1992. And so there have been regulations and they have been, tweaked and strengthened over the years. And this is the next step in tightening those standards. Next slide, please. Okay. All right, next I will want to provide a little national context. There are currently 86 commercial sterilizers operating in the country. You can see where they are located on the map here. When the rule was proposed in April of this year, there were 23 facilities that were identified to be where we anticipate the highest risk from ethylene oxide to be. Sterilization Services of Tennessee is one of those 23 facilities where we anticipate the highest risk. So we are focusing the conversation here today on this facility because we believe there is a higher risk to people who live nearby. And there could also be a higher risk to people who work in these facilities or who work or go to school nearby the facility. EPA considered all 86 of these sterilizers when we developed solutions to reduce emissions from these facilities. Next slide, please. Now, where the pollution is coming from within the facility is important so that we can understand how solutions can be put in place to reduce the risk of EtO. So there are two ways that EtO can leave the facility. The first way is that after EtO is used to sterilize objects, it is sucked into a control system. These systems act on several processes at their facility. Their sterilization chambers and primary aeration rooms are controlled, and the air from these rooms passes through control devices that are acquired by state and federal permits and standards. Now, the second type of EtO emissions is the EtO that does not get sucked into a control device. This is EtO that escapes through other places, leaks and gaps, even windows and doors. This escaping EtO is often called fugitive emissions because it is emissions that does not get captured and sucked into a control device. So fugitive emissions are not covered under the current regulations that were proposed in the 90s, because at that time, when that regulation was written, the importance of the fugitive emissions was not well understood. At Sterilization Services of Tennessee, the majority of the EtO risk is resulting from these escaping or fugitive emissions. In fact, we estimate that 14% of the emissions from sterilization services is in the form of controlled stack emissions, and 86 is in the form of the uncontrolled fugitive emissions. Next slide, please. Okay. So the best solution to reduce the EtO risk from this facility is to reduce its emissions of EtO entering the environment. Our proposed regulation under the Clean Air Act will require greater control of the stack emissions that are passing through control devices, but more importantly, it will also require capture and elimination of fugitive emissions that are not currently being controlled at this facility. We estimate that our proposed regulation will reduce EtO emissions from all commercial sterilizers across the country by 19 tons per year, which is about an 80% reduction nationwide. More importantly, our proposed regulation will ensure that the lifetime cancer risk will be below 100 in a million in every community located near any of these facilities, including here in Memphis. As part of the proposed regulation, we are proposing a compliance deadline of 18 months after we issue our final rule, instead of the customary 3-year compliance period. And we are requesting comments on this part of the proposal. In the Clean Air Act, it usually allows a 3-year period because large facilities need time to design, purchase, and install equipment. In this case, upon doing EPA's analysis, they decided that these facilities could get that done in a shorter timeline. So that's why they're proposing 18 months. But we are also soliciting comments on this proposed compliance deadline. As Caroline mentioned, we have learned that EtO is not persistent in the environment. It means that it is a chemical that doesn't last for a long time in the environment. It gets destroyed, dissipated, or broken down. So by reducing the amount of EtO coming out of this facility, the risk to the community will be quickly reduced. Next slide. Okay, perfect. To ensure that the proposed regulation under the Clean Air Act will result in lower EtO emissions, we are also proposing to improve Sterilization Services of Tennessee's and other sterilizers' accountability by requiring more robust testing, monitoring, and reporting of EtO emissions. We are proposing to significantly increase the monitoring requirements of EtO emissions to include continuous monitoring, and we are also requesting comments on this part of the rule. To summarize, our proposed action under the Clean Air Act will significantly reduce EtO emissions from commercial sterilizers like Sterilization Services of Tennessee through a combination of much better control equipment for so-called fugitive emissions, tougher standards for stack emissions that are already being controlled, and improved accountability through more thorough testing, monitoring, and reporting requirements. EPA is asking for comments on 82 specific topics or aspects of the proposed rule. These topics are identified in the text of the rule with a numbering system that has the letter C followed by a sequential number, such as C-1, C-2, and so on up to C-82. We have an example here on this slide for the proposed emission standard for sterilization chamber vents, or SCVs, as shown on the slide, which is topic number C8. So if you wanted to look through the rule and search for different aspects, you could search for it using this system. Next slide, please. The timeline. So the proposed regulation was published in the Federal Register on April 13th of this year, and the comment period extends to June 27th. And we are conducting webinars and meetings at the national and local level, such as here tonight, through the end of the comment period. We expect to issue our final rule within 1 year of the end of the comment period, and we are proposing a compliance deadline of 18 months once the final rule is issued, as I mentioned earlier. So this concludes our presentation on the proposed regulation under the Clean Air Act. Now, I will pass it back to Brandy, who will introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Seneca. As a reminder, for everyone participating online, you can place your questions in the Q&A area in Zoom. We will also offer an opportunity for in-person questions throughout this session this evening. I want to repeat what Seneca said earlier. We have an open public comment period for the Clean Air Act rule for commercial sterilizers that closes on June 27th. We encourage you to submit your comments formally for the record. We have people here who can help you navigate the regulations.gov website or provide you a labeled envelope to submit your comments for the record. I'm going to now turn it over to my colleague, Erin Jones, who will speak on the other proposed action where the public comment period closes on June 27th, and you can officially submit your comments for the record. And Erin, it is your turn.
Well, thank you, Brandy. Good evening, everybody. I'm really glad to be here with y'all tonight. So again, in my role as the Emerging Contaminants Coordinator in EPA Region 4, a lot of my work focuses on evolving issues that reflect the newest and the best science that's available to EPA. And so the policy and regulatory steps that EPA takes to incorporate that new science is something that we're communicating with you about tonight to ensure protection of human health and the environment. Next slide. So once again, y'all have seen this slide a couple times tonight, so hang in there. We got one more rule to walk you through, and then we'll have some time for questions. But again, the top action in yellow, in the yellow circle, is the one I'm going to be talking about. And again, if this is finalized as written, it will apply to anyone who uses EtO as a sterilizer, and it's including commercial sterilizers such as Sterilization Services of Tennessee, but it also includes locations such as healthcare facilities. Next slide. So while EPA regulates EtO under a number of different environmental laws, the agency's current efforts to reduce the chemicals risk fall into two main categories. You heard Seneca talk about EtOs and air toxic under the Clean Air Act. And again, just spoke about that one. The one I'm talking about is EtO as a pesticide under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act. You're going to hear me call that FIFRA going forward. When EtO is used to sterilize products, it's considered a pesticide under federal law. So think about a pesticide as something that kills insects, but this is killing really tiny bugs. So that's the question we had earlier this morning about it being a pesticide. So more of a microbial kind of thing. Next slide. As part of our mandate under FIFRA, EPA's Chemical Safety Office reevaluates existing pesticides as part of our registration review program. We reassess the safety of each currently registered pesticide every 15 years as part of our risk assessment process. And they take any next needed steps or what we call mitigation measures to address any risks that we find. And the way we do that is generally not by proposing rules the way that our air office does, but by proposing changes to what is essentially a license or a label on the pesticide product itself that show how it should be used. And we do this in a proposed interim decision or a PID. So we don't have rules to kind of govern this. It's called an interim decision, or once it's final, it is enforceable. In April, we used our authority under FIFRA to propose a comprehensive set of new mitigation measures to protect people facing long-term exposures to this dangerous chemical that's known to increase the risk of certain types of cancer. Our proposal would protect both workers who are exposed to EtO on the job, as well as people who live, work, or go to school or daycare near sterilization facilities that emit EtO. These proposed actions would be applicable nationally to anyone that uses EtO as a sterilizer, and not just the large commercial sterilizers that are treating medical devices, but to all facilities that use EtO to sterilize things. And again, this includes healthcare facilities and facilities that sterilize dried herbs and spices to prevent illnesses caused by Salmonella and E. coli. So our proposal reflects significant coordination with the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Occupational Health and Safety Administration to deliver these risk reductions while maintaining these critical sterilization care capabilities. Next slide. The actions that we have proposed are driven again by the latest available science, including a new agency analysis showing that the risk to workers who sterilize products over the course of a 35-year career are more significant than we previously thought. First, we're proposing to prohibit the use of EtO where it's not needed because there's an effective alternative. And this includes uses in museums, archival settings, beekeeping equipment in North Carolina, cosmetics, and musical instruments. And so in those instances, there's an alternative to EtO, and we're proposing to stop using EtO. Next, we've proposed several measures to reduce the risk of EtO in settings where we don't have an effective alternative, and that is in sterilizing certain medical equipment and the dried herbs and spices. Generally, these measures are aimed at reducing the amount of EtO that's being used and decreasing the workers' exposure by automating processes. And for workers, we're proposing to reduce the amount of EtO that's used to sterilize medical devices while still making sure that those FDA requirements for sterility are met. Our proposal also includes requiring engineering controls, such as automation, separating the HVAC systems between offices and EtO sterilization areas, increasing ventilation in EtO storage areas, and other emissions capture technologies so that we can reduce exposures to workers during the sterilization process. And we're expanding personal protective equipment, or PPE, requirements to ensure that workers in sterilization facilities wear that PPE during certain tasks of the sterilization process when EtO exposures could be higher. And in addition, we're setting a new requirement that all workers in a facility wear PPE when EtO concentrations exceed 10 parts per billion, or ppb, based on real-time monitoring. 10 ppb is the lowest real-time concentration of ethylene oxide that can be quantified in a commercial sterilization facility using today's technology. We're also proposing new engineering controls for healthcare facilities that sterilize medical equipment, such as negative air pressure in rooms containing EtO sterilization devices, and the use of abatement devices that will remove ethylene oxide from exhaust air and reduce discharge to the environment. These are just a few of the examples in the proposed interim decision. Additionally, this proposal includes new data collection and reporting requirements in commercial sterilization facilities, going to help us identify and improve protective monitoring technologies and assess the effectiveness of the proposed mitigation measures over time. So we'll be collecting data, and based on this data, we intend to initiate the next round of registration review for EtO earlier than that 15-year period I mentioned earlier. so we can take faster action to incorporate any needed additional protections, as well as account for any advances in technology. Although we know from our extensive engagement with the EtO industry representatives that many of these measures are being used at some facilities, our proposal is going to require these measures across the board at all commercial sterilization facilities to protect workers. Some of these measures can be implemented quickly, such as the PPE requirement, while others could take a little longer to implement, like engineering controls. We're committed to taking additional action when data shows there's more protection needed and when new processes or technological advances can further reduce exposures. So taken together with EPA's proposed air emission standards rule, which you heard about from Seneca, these actions represent a comprehensive approach to increase the safety in communities for workers and for all who are exposed to this air toxic at work or in schools, while providing a path for these facilities to continue to fill the critical national need for sterilized medical supplies. Next slide. So moving forward, we want to hear from you. We're encouraging the stakeholders, including community, industry, and public health leaders, to participate in this public comment process that's open right now, as we're striving to reduce the risk to EtO. Again, it closes on June 27th, same time frame as the air rule. And in a moment, we'll walk everyone through the details of how to learn more about the process and how you can comment. Next slide. So once the public comment closes, it typically takes EPA about 1 year to address those comments and make a proposed decision, a final decision. We'll publish an interim decision at that time. And depending on the protective measures, it could take 1 to 5 years for facilities to fully comply. And the timeline for the implementation of each measure is something we're taking public comment on as part of this open comment period. So throughout this process, we'll continue to work to ensure that the public, especially in impacted communities, has access to the information that they need to make informed, independent judgments about risk and to increase public involvement in the regulatory process, which is why we're here tonight sharing this information with you. Now back to Brandy to allow us to address any questions about the 2 actions that you just heard about.
Thank you, Erin. So at this time, we finished the formal presentations on the background for ethylene oxide and the risks and the 2 proposed actions. So we are going to take a few questions here in the room, and then we will read aloud some of the questions we've already received virtually, and then we'll see if any of our phone audience has a question. So if anyone.
Shelby Campbell.
Oh, that's thank you. Dr. Taylor. I was going to jump ahead of you. So we are going to unmute Dr. Michelle Taylor with the Shelby County Health Department because she does want to provide some remarks. And while we are getting that queued up, we're going to make sure the microphones here in the room are ready and on for you to make your comments here in the room. We see you, Dr. Taylor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Let me know when you're ready.
Just a second, Dr. Taylor. We're going to adjust the volume. Let's test it again, please.
Can you hear me? Hello?
The website that we use to present information related to our fall meetings. If you visit that website, it now says that this is outdated material and it has been archived. To get into the specifics of why we are still referring to this map, I'm going to turn it over to Seneca, and he's going to walk us through why this map helps us still conceptualize the risk that is near the facility.
All right, thank you, Brandy.
And my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason on the website it says that it is no longer current is just because the maps were created using data that was collected over certain years, as Caroline mentioned, in 2021 and 2022. So as those data, the usage changes, facilities that the operation changes from year to year, and weather patterns, it can change. These maps can change and be updated. And that, I believe that was a statement that was put on the websites for all of the facilities at EPA, because the status of many facilities has changed. At here, sorry, I'm just making sure that everything's good for our folks online. Here in Memphis, at the Sterilization Services of Tennessee, we do not have any information to indicate that their operations have changed significantly. So here I would say that the map is still accurate.
So that was actually my next question, asking if you had any information as to if they had made any updates, because we have not been able to get that information from the health department. So to your knowledge, they have not made any updates.
To my knowledge, no, but I would defer to our folks at the Shelby County Health Department, as they are the more immediate, boots on the ground, and they would have the most up-to-date information. But as far as we know, since the last time we have been here in October, that there have not been updates to the facility at this time.
Gotcha. I have another question that maybe you guys can answer. In March, the Shelby County Health Department held a meeting. That was a community meeting for them to discuss their talking points. And one of the things that Dr. Taylor said was that when we asked about air monitoring, because we have 0 air monitors in South Memphis, we have them in East Memphis, Germantown, Collierville, we have no air monitors in South Memphis. And Dr. Taylor specifically said, when we asked her about fence line monitoring for sterilization services and about South Memphis, she said that the Shelby County Health Department has to get permission from the EPA to put air monitors in the area. Is that true?
Do we have a Sarah that would want to do this, or Caroline?
So Caroline, we'll turn it over to Caroline. She can answer it.
Thank you for that question. And for those of you who are participating via Zoom tonight, the question was whether or not EPA would allow the Shelby County Health Department to monitor for ethylene oxide with the use of a fence line monitor. Let me take a step back and make sure that I'm clear when I respond to this question. Anytime you're going to monitor for any pollutant, you have to have a quality assurance project plan.
Okay.
And that quality assurance project plan tells us how you're going to collect the data and how you are going to protect the data to ensure that we have quality data to refer back to. And so EPA cannot prevent anyone from monitoring. Let me say that. But we highly recommend modeling for ethylene oxide, because ethylene oxide at low levels is not detected. And we don't have scientific equipment that are specialized enough to actually detect ethylene oxide at those low levels. And so the best result for us is to get specific information from the facility, which we did, and build a model based on wind patterns, weather conditions, how much ethylene oxide is being utilized by that facility, what kind of controls it does have versus what it does not have, and take a look to see where the closest receptor or the closest residential structure is, to see how that model will show the dispersion. So we're getting a better view of how that dispersion impacts that neighboring community, as opposed to putting one monitor and you're only going to get readings at that one location.
Okay.
Okay, and so EPA cannot prevent anyone from monitoring
So
for
no one needs your
ethylene
permission in
oxide.
order to do air monitoring?
Nobody needs our permission.
Okay,
But what we do say, if you're going to utilize federal dollars
Mhm.
to do the monitoring, you have to have a quality assurance plan.
so you will work with the health department on that. So have they submitted a quality assurance plan?
We have not received a quality assurance plan for monitoring of ethylene oxide.
Okay,
But like I said, keep in mind, ethylene oxide is very difficult to monitor at those low levels. Not only that, ethylene oxide, when it gets into the environment, it dissipates rather quickly.
Mhm.
And we've also picked up levels of ethylene oxide in various, not EPA, because we haven't done monitoring, but just coordinating with other states. In Region 4, we have 8 states that we oversee. We have 2 other states that have conducted monitoring for ethylene oxide. And they've had multiple challenges trying to actually collect data that they don't have to actually flag because of certain, challenges with the monitoring instrument.
okay, thank you for that. I also want to, Mhm.
Thank you. Just to add on to the monitoring, many of the challenges with monitoring that Caroline were talking about at the, in the community, what we call ambient monitoring, and the challenges associated with that, as well as, well, I guess I want to make a distinction between the types of monitoring that is being proposed in the proposed rule. It is a different technology of monitor that, because in the stacks and vents that the air will be leaving from the facility, the EtO will be more concentrated, the air will be in a more controlled environment, and the technology that is being proposed for that situation is much more efficient, it's much more precise, and so we feel a lot more confident about being able to measure the EtO in that situation, which is why that is what is being proposed in the rule. And that is why that information that we're confident about can be then used to model and make sure that we are being protective of public health. Whereas the technology that you would use either for fence line monitoring or for ambient monitoring out in the community, that is a different type of technology. It's a different method, a different equipment. So that's just the distinction I'm making, is that in the proposed rule under the Clean Air Act, EPA is proposing a certain type of monitoring that has been shown to be very effective and precise and consistent.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'll add one more little bit on the pesticide side, just so that y'all know that in that proposed action, we're requiring real-time monitoring for workers inside the facility.
That's important.
Okay, and so just, if you think that's important, and if you would like, to comment on the time frame for that, that would be a 2-year implementation time for that requirement.
Okay.
So just make sure that you know that that is a piece of that pesticide, real-time monitoring for workers, which again would quickly alert us to a release within the facility, and hopefully before it would get out in the community.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, I want to say, because I know you guys probably won't say it, but we have been fighting this fight ever since we found out about it in October. One of the things I want to make sure that we mention is Sterilization Services has a sister facility in Georgia. When Georgia Health Department requested that they would make updates so that they would provide fewer fugitive emissions, they did so. However, in Memphis, they won't reply to reporters, they won't reply to the community. Apparently, they've been in conversation with the health department. So if they can make these changes in Georgia, they can do it here in Memphis, and we should not have to wait 18 months for them to do it. So it is important that you guys reach out to the health department, Dr. Taylor, and let them know that we want action now. We don't want to wait 18 months for the EPA in another 2-3 years. We want it done now. They've been polluting us for decades. Many of us were born and raised in South Memphis, Riverside, and we deserve to breathe clean air, period.
Well, she just actually touched on the first part of my question and just answered it. That's the first thing we need to do is reach out to the health department. But in terms of the public comment, my question is, you all said comment on the timeline. So before it's gonna take, I think you said about 12 months for this rule to be implemented or to be ruled on, is that right?
To be final.
To be final, and then, so that's 12 months for it to be final, and then they have 18 months to come into compliance. So as a part of the public comment, can it be that they be required to come into compliance when the rule actually goes into place?
That can be a comment, and I encourage you to make that comment.
So you all hear that? That's a way that we can make a change. Everybody needs to make sure that they participate in the public comment process and make sure that as a part of that request, you request that they be ordered to be in compliance within this 12-month period before this rule goes into place.
Yes, ma'am, you're next. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. I know I came in a little late, and I know I heard you all talking about the 3 different variants of cancer, cancer of the blood, breast cancer, and lymphoma cancer. Are there any other that you know of? And number 2, and you know, there are no dumb questions, just dumb when you don't know and don't ask. Just like we can go and get tested to see if we've got COVID, can we get tested for this? Because I don't want us to wait so long, and then when you go to the doctor, well, it's already so far in your system until then you find out you got cancer. So what can we do to make sure that none of us, because, you know, I grew up in South Memphis, and I'm 60, and I grew up, went to school and everything out here, and, you know, and my father and my mother, both of them has died. Not to say that it happened here, whatever, they both died from lung cancer. My mother didn't even smoke. So, and I don't smoke, but I still live here in my husband's family home. And I just want to know, what can we do? And some issues that's happened to both of my daughters. Thank God they're still here, but some different things, cancer and different things has happened to them. They're 31 and 40. So I just want to know, what is it? What kind of tests can we get done? And are these only 3 on here, the breast and the lymphoma and the cancer of the blood? Are there any other?
So thank you for that question. For those online, the question is, are there other types of cancers that can be caused by ethylene oxide? Based on the current health studies that have taken place, those are the cancers that have been linked to ethylene oxide exposure: lymphomas, breast cancer, and cancers of the blood. As far as your next question about what types of tests are available to determine if someone has been has cancer, or types of screenings, there are some medical tests that can show if you have been exposed to ethylene oxide, but these tests won't necessarily predict if you have a health problem. Once the exposure stops, ethylene oxide leaves the body within hours or days. So a medical test may not show if you've been exposed in the past. It goes back to what Caroline said earlier, that ethylene oxide does not linger. It dissipates quickly. The test cannot tell you whether the ethylene oxide in your body is from environmental exposure or was naturally produced. However, we also received this question earlier today, and so what we committed was to reach out to our partners at Shelby County Health Department to see if there are any screenings that they offer as well, and to be able to provide that information as a resource to you all. I know we're going to try to get Dr. Taylor back online, back online, and so hopefully she will be able to respond to that. Sir?
Hi, my name is Paul Klein. I'm a Memphis resident. This is a question for you, our moderator. You mentioned earlier that all the elected officials were in attendance. You mentioned they were, but I'm not seeing any. I'd like to ask you to ask any elected officials in this room to stand up and be recognized.
So thank you, Mr. Klein. Let me clarify my statement. I wanted to recognize that we have been in contact with elected officials in the Memphis Shelby County area. We started our outreach to them as soon as we knew that we were going to do proposed outreach, very similar to the way we did last fall with the community. Earlier today, we had Congressman Cohen's office listening on the call. He very clearly said that they are an advocate for this community. They are tracking what's going on, and they want to hold responsible parties accountable. We have been in touch with the mayor's office, and we also have been in touch with Councilman Ford. We have briefed the city council. So we are continuing to keep them updated. And I apologize if I was not clear earlier.
Oh, that's great. I just wanted to know if any were in the room.
Well, if there are elected officials in the room,
Let's stand up.
please stand up.
Nope. Okay, now what about Sterilization Services of Tennessee? They were made aware of this community meeting. Are there any of their representatives in the room?
Are there any representatives from Sterilization Services of Tennessee in the room? They could possibly be online virtually.
Okay. Well, I showed up in the room. It's not hard. All these people took the time to come down here, so good. You mentioned there's 86 facilities like this in America. 23 of them, including the one in Memphis, are of particular concern. The same company owns another one in Tennessee, over in New Tazewell, East Tennessee. Is that one of the 23 that you are concerned about?
So I'm going to turn that over to Seneca to answer.
So to address that question, the facility in New Tazewell is a different company. It's not the same company.
It says, I drove past the building. It says Sterilization Services of Tennessee on it.
It's DeRoyal Industries, as far as we know. I'm not aware of any connection between the two companies. It is it's DeRoyal Industries. But however, they are one of the high-risk facilities. So they are one of the ones that we are concerned with and paying close attention to.
And have you held a public meeting over there in New Tazewell?
Yes, last week.
Excellent.
And again, and first in the fall. But so last week was the second meeting there.
Good. We just hadn't heard anything about it here in Memphis. So both ends of the state are being polluted by this company. East Tennessee and us in West Tennessee. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I repeatedly hear that EtO doesn't stay in your body long. Who was a part of this study? How long was the study? And were there any participants in this neighborhood included in that study? Because in order for a cancer to become cancerous, it has to remain in your body for some period of time. So it's not like you walk away and it just dissipates. So I don't get that part. So, yeah.
Okay, so thank you. So the question was just some clarification on the statement about ethylene oxide dissipating quickly and not staying in the body. Thank you for that. I'm not a health professional, so I am. Okay, thank you. So what I will do is turn to our colleague who is with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, and if he can get off mute, then we will, he has some background information on the study that was conducted.
I would love to hear about it.
Okay. Peter, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you and good evening to everyone. And my apologies, my laptop camera is not working. And I also attended the New Tazewell meeting last fall. My name is Peter Kowalski. I'm in the Public Health Service and also stationed at the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And I'm based in Atlanta. And thank you. I'd like to thank the EPA and the folks that have turned out this evening to discuss this important issue. So regarding one of the most important health studies. It's called an epidemiology study or health study. It was done of workers who were exposed really every day at work for many years at very high concentrations. And the study was started at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which is part of the CDC. And one of the principal researchers is named Dr. Steeland, and he went on and is at Emory University. So this was a mortality study that looked at many different all types of deaths from all types of cancer, and the workers, as I mentioned, were exposed day in and day out. So ethylene oxide is rapidly, the throughput goes through the body, but if you're being, consistently or repeatedly exposed, your cells are in contact with ethylene oxide. And I also would like to take a moment and talk about, there was the previous question is about a test, test for ethylene oxide. And because it's ethylene oxide actually binds with a protein and forms a chemical called an addict. And that can be measured, and the CDC does measure it, and it's very useful for it's a biomarker that is useful for helping determine overexposure in occupational settings where workers are exposed to high levels of ethylene oxide. The CDC has measured it. This biomarker can be measured in background levels in adults randomly sampled across the country. Its usefulness in determining or helping assess low-level exposure from in an ambient setting or a community setting hasn't been demonstrated yet. The CDC lab that measures these addicts or this biomarker also shows that that smokers have roughly 7 or 8 times the amount of biomarker or ethylene oxide biomarker as opposed to non-smokers. So in other words, cigarette and other smoking is also a source of ethylene oxide exposure. Thank you.
So depending on how it's excreted from the body or metabolized, so that would determine how long it remains in the body, correct? Because certain comorbidities would subject you to hanging on to it longer, like if it's excreted through the liver, if you have liver disease or kidney disease, right?
So people, metabolism vary by individually. There also could be human characteristics in terms of the metabolism of ethylene oxide. So that is true.
Okay, so I think it's kind of a false statement to mislead us into thinking that as soon as you step outside of this community, your risk goes down. That's just not true. And another thing I'm going to pose to you all. Every other community besides South Memphis has monitoring, like she mentioned. But we are we're prolific. I mean, we have waste facilities in South Memphis.
Yeah.
We have burn facilities in South Memphis. So why not start with South Memphis when a lot of these other communities avoid it, or they put them here because it's South Memphis? I don't get that. So that's a question I pose to you all, the EPA.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. she spoke what I wanted to say. Excuse me, I'm jumping in because I'm gonna have to leave everything she said and the lady that had the questions first. Why is it you're here, but nobody have really clear understanding about what's happening to the people over here? It was just brought here and nobody investigated. They did the same thing in Germantown, Collierville. They're able to control, but they're telling us in South Memphis, we gotta go through some special directions to get it monitored for our community. Yet it's here. And not only is that waste place here, but there is a company here that brings bodies, bad, broken off or diseased pieces, dead diseased pieces here, and it's destroyed here, over here in this area. And not only is it a company like that, but there's also that Valero, that gas place that exhumes out all of that air over here, and then they're wondering what's wrong with us, or we are appearing to be stupid. I guess we'll be growing 5 legs after a while, but it's funny that you all are here to tell us it dissipates. That is strange to me, to how it gets into the air and it dissipates. It gets into our bodies. Does it dissipate? You know, I want to know that. Yeah. So, and then if it dissipates, that's the only thing I couldn't understand. Why are y'all here? And why didn't you bring up the current map? Why didn't all of us have one? I feel insulted for a person that does a presentation and then refuse to give you all the proper information right here. I thought we were gonna have hands-on stuff right here for us to follow you as you talk. But you just sat there and used all those huge words, talked on, and left us lost in the middle of it.
Okay, I would like to just make one statement. And you asked a question about monitoring. And there are 2 different types of monitoring that is done by EPA, under EPA's guidance, let me say it that way. And those monitoring are done by our state air pollution control agencies, as well as the local air pollution control agencies. We have criteria pollutants, which are a part of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And if you are interested in having more monitoring done in this area, then when it is time for the annual monitoring plan for this area to be reviewed, we ask that you comment on it, because Shelby County publicizes that monitoring plan every year. And you can comment on that monitoring plan and state that you would like to have additional monitoring in this area. The pollutant that we're talking about tonight, that is a hazardous air pollutant, a toxic pollutant here that's coming out of Sterilization Services of Tennessee. Okay, that is under a whole different umbrella. And so what we're talking about, anytime you're talking about a hazardous air pollutants, some of them are easy to monitor for and others are not. But with the proposed rule that's on the table right now, we're going to provide something way better than fence line monitoring. We're talking about continuous emission monitoring, meaning monitoring everything that's coming out of this facility. But if you put a monitor on the fence line, the further you are away from the source, the more compromised that data is. And so that is the step that we are moving forward to do in this proposed rule, and are asking for your comment on that part of the rule as well. So we're not overlooking what you're asking for. but we're making sure that we're utilizing the best technology to find out exactly what's coming out of that facility and how much of it.
Hello, Ms. Freeman, can you hear me?
Yes, Dr. Taylor, we can hear you.
Great. I'm hoping I can speak for just a little bit and try to give an overview and answer a few of the questions that I've heard so far, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Taylor.
Great. Greetings from Montgomery, Alabama, everyone. My apologies for not being there in person. I'm actually away at military training, but I want everyone in the audience to know that me and the SCHD staff are still very much engaged in keeping you informed about the upcoming rule changes that you've heard discussed tonight around ethylene oxide, while continuing to work with you to improve environmental health in Shelby County. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to hear the questions that you all are answering and to hear how you all are pushing the envelope to make sure that health is protected in the county. 3 Shelby County Health Department staff members were at this morning's meeting, so we were able to capture a lot of the questions and comments there. We have representatives in the audience tonight, and we have continued to work closely with the EPA, the Tennessee Department of Energy and Conservation, the Tennessee Department of Health, the Agency for Toxic Substances Disease Registry, and the community to ensure you have the information you're requesting. We hear you and we're listening. Please continue to hold Shelby County Health Department accountable for all legal measures we can take to address the community's needs. And where there are not currently legal measures, please hold our elected officials, particularly at the state and federal levels, accountable for introducing legislation that will give Shelby County Health Department the authority required to continue to protect health in our community and strengthen that protection whenever possible. Congressman Cohen has represented District 9 in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2007, and our state representatives have varying lengths of service representing Shelby County. All of them have the power to improve the laws currently on the books. And if your research determines that their record on introducing environmental health legislation and public health legislation is thin, make sure to let them know. I and the Shelby County Health Department staff will continue to do the same thing. We hear you and we're listening. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for fighting for the people of South Memphis. I am going to commit to you all tonight that I and my staff will continue to fight for additional air monitors. We have not had the opportunity to hear straight from the EPA that we don't need their permission. So we will continue to fight for those additional resources that, like Ms. Freeman shared, if they are federally funded, we still have to get approval from the state through the Tennessee Department of Energy and Conservation. So I am looking forward to seeing every last one of you all in person at the next community meeting. And I really, really do appreciate your time tonight and your questions.
Dr. Taylor, hi, can you hear me? This is Caroline Freeman.
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Can you please speak to the public hearing on the annual network plan and how the community can actually get involved and actually comment on that plan to request additional monitoring? Thank you.
Absolutely. So as a lot of you all know, and you've been watching in the news, we now have a fully staffed air quality monitoring section, and we have received our continued certificate of eligibility from another section of the EPA, so we are fully staffed. As soon as we get ready with that plan, we will have a community meeting to discuss the plan, and we will have a comment period. And I'm committing tonight to make sure that, and my staff is on the line and in person, so they know if I'm saying this, it's going to happen. We are going to make sure that we get additional monitors in South Memphis, and we're going to press everyone who is responsible for making sure that those resources, funding is available to do that. We're going to make sure that we get that funding for the community.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Taylor. What I would like to do, so that we are respectful of your time, and also so you can know what questions have been asked virtually, I'm going to read out a couple of the questions from the Q&A portal on Zoom. First question, for those who lived, worked, or played in the affected area, will there be a compensation? The answer is EPA is not able to provide compensation to those in the affected area. Another question from Kathy Robinson. It was mentioned that 2 of the recommendations will be to propose a rule for commercial sterilizers to reduce emissions and propose stronger laws for chemical and polymer plants. Under a new presidential administration, can these environmental suggestions / recommendations / rules be deregulated at some point? The answer is a new administration could propose new regulations that would alter these regulations, or it could also rescind the rules. If it were to propose new regulations, a public comment period is required. And then also from Kathy Robinson, how can fugitive emissions be captured? Fugitive emissions can be captured by installing additional equipment designed to capture uncontrolled emissions. From another commenter, why use 100 in a million when mapping risk? Shouldn't you map 1 in million risk? The answer is the gradient map shows risks ranging from 100 in a million, lightest blue, up to the max of 2,000 in a million, darkest blue area near the facility. As part of EPA's regulatory program for air toxics, we look closely at risks at or above 100 and 1 million to evaluate whether and how much the risk should be reduced. This approach helps EPA target our actions or efforts to communities facing the highest levels of risk. Okay. Another question, I have relatives in the area with asthma and stomach cancer. What will be done for the generational health crises that have plagued this community? The answer is the Shelby County Health Department is best positioned to address questions about generational health in the community. Another question, with the lack of inspectors who would be monitoring the plant, and how often would the plant be audited? The answer, permitting and enforcement inspections are primarily the responsibility of the Shelby County Health Department. However, EPA does maintain enforcement oversight of our federal regulations. Next question, should residents within the affected areas wear PPE when outdoors for an extended time? The answer is, there are not any short-term or acute risks from exposure. Okay. The risks being presented tonight are from long-term ethylene oxide exposure. Okay, next question. Who has the responsibility of ensuring the PPE, the personal protective equipment at the work site, is followed? The answer is permitting and enforcement / inspections are primarily the responsible of the Shelby County Health Department, but EPA does maintain federal oversight authority. And then a question, what is the overall purpose of this meeting intended to do other than inform? This meeting is here to inform you, to make you aware of these proposed actions that we encourage you to officially make comments for the record. So I'm going to pause for this and turn it back in the room. However, I do want to say we have another segment to present and then another short Q&A session before we wrap up. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlene Davis Evans, and I have been in this community for over 70 years. And my question is, you're answering questions about your health, But what about the brochure that I received that is also damaging our property? What is going on with that? And how can it be fixed?
So the question in the room was, we are answering questions related to health, but a brochure was received that mentioned the property and the damage that was being done to that. What are we going to do about that? So, Ms. Davis Evans, thank you for your question. EPA is not in a position to talk about or have a role in property damage due to ethylene oxide.
Okay, but it's saying that our property value is going down. Why?
I'm actually unfamiliar with the brochure that you're referring to.
Hi, I just have just a little thing. I know you were saying that the more comments you get, then, that helps, but there are some people that don't have access to email. For those that are 70 and 80 years old, how can they voice their opinion, their comments?
So here tonight, we have labeled envelopes and we have comment forms with the docket numbers for each of the actions being proposed. We encourage everyone to write their comment on those forms. In addition, we have computers in the outside area there, and we have someone there who can assist you to navigate to the regulations.gov site. They can't type or write the comment for you, but they can help you get to that site. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Based on her question. Now, she stated they're 80 and 90 years old.
Yes.
They may not be here tonight. They live in this area. So what are you going to do to make sure they get your paperwork in order to file their complaint?
Thank you for that question. The question in the room was, we do have a lot of elderly residents in the area who were unable to make it tonight. And so the question is, what are we going to do to make sure they get the information and the tools that they need to comment on these proposed actions? That is a great question. It came up this afternoon. As we mentioned earlier, you all are our boots on the ground, and we encourage you to give us information. So we have talked with Mr. Pearson with the Mississippi Community for Air Pollution, Against Pollution, and we are going to work with them to help get information to those residents that we may not have been able to get in touch with today. We understand it is important. We understand that this public comment period is ending soon, and we want to get that information. So we are going to work with Mr. Pearson and Yolanda, the Sphinx, to get information to those residents. Yes, sir.
Is it also possible to have public service announcements whereby via radio and television, those addresses are given out for residents to get that address to mail in?
Okay, thank you for that question. The question in the room is it possible to have public service announcements via radio to announce the address that folks can submit their comments to? And the answer is yes. We will get a public service announcement out for local radio.
This is the 8th.
Yes, ma'am.
The deadline is the 27th.
Yes, ma'am.
When?
We have several team members online now who, hearing this comment, hearing what I just said, will start working on getting that done, and we will try to have it to radio stations, if not, probably early next week on Monday.
Also, I'm going to ask for those of you who are in attendance tonight, if you know of an elderly person who could not make it tonight, please take an extra envelope and some of those forms on the table in the vestibule with you, and please share it with them and tell them, about what you heard tonight regarding the proposal of these actions that EPA have on the table right now, and encourage them to go ahead and submit a comment on the rule. And also, we will be talking to you momentarily about how to comment on the rule. Dr. Taylor, I see you came back on screen. Would you like to say something else?
Yes, ma'am. I was going to say that we would be happy to help with those public service announcements and with banning out volunteers to residents who weren't able to make it to the meeting tonight so that we can get those forms filled out and help them fill out those forms.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. We're going to take one more question in the room and we're going to return just to close out the actual presentation and then come back to the question and answer session.
Mine is really not a question, it's more of a suggestion. I work for a financial institution, and being that since COVID, people are really having a hard time. So I look at people's situation as if it was me, okay? So I want to ask you all to look at it as if you live in this neighborhood. Put yourself in this position, because 18 months, 1 to 5 years before something maybe not be done. You know how many of us could be in caskets and breathing in this stuff? So, I mean, look at it and think of it if it was yourself. What would you do?
Thank you for that. The comment in the room was for us to look at the situation as if we lived here, as if we were residents, and then think about what we would do. So thank you for that. Again, we're going to turn to the last bit of our presentation. That way we can make sure that you all are fully aware of where to go to make these official comments for the record. And it's real quick. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, mine is real short. I advocate for elderly. You all have a map up there with addresses on. Why not mail it to their home?
So we have mailed out fact sheets. We mailed out fact sheets in the fall and we mailed out fact sheets last week.
But what you're talking about now is very important.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
And their vote count. So if it gets to their home, it'll get to you.
And again, we pull our addresses from a database. That is the best information that we have at our fingertips right now. But if you know of someone that has not received the information, please give us their information and we will drop something in the mail tomorrow. We will make sure that they receive the information. We are trying to keep up with the most up-to-date information of the contacts in this area. We're going to turn to this presentation just quickly to close this out and then return back to the question and answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandy. Again, we're going to reflect really quickly on what we've heard so far, and we'll take an in-depth look at the EtO webpage, which is a good one-stop shop for those of you who are comfortable going on the web. So just to recap, we've learned that EtO is potentially causing risk to communities and workers. We've proposed comprehensive solutions to reduce the risk, and we're seeking very important public comment on these solutions. So let's go to the next slide to show you the EtO webpage. This is, again, a good one-stop shop, and it has a lot of information about EtO, the red arrow showing you where to go learn more and link to that information. We have outreach materials. We have a yellow area here on the slide pointing to that area. And also in the green box, comment on proposed EtO actions to reduce risk. We'll link you to pathways to comment electronically on the computer to these different actions that we have. Again, we do have the mail in the back of the room. If you want to mail in your comments or grab some for your neighbors, please take advantage of that. And also the computer in the back, if you want to take a look at what it looks like to comment electronically and you're not ready to make it yet, they can also just show you what it's going to look like when you make that electronic comment. But if you're ready to make your comment, you can hit submit. Next slide. This is what it does look like in the docket. There is a comment button for each of our actions. It will look like this. And the next slide, once you click that comment button, you can type in your comment, and if you have any other documents that you want to upload, if you have any other information you'd like to submit to EPA, you can upload it right in that same page. Don't forget to scroll all the way to the bottom and click submit comment at the bottom. Next slide. This slide kind of pulls together lots of useful information, and we have this available as a printout at the back of the room, so make sure you grab one before that you leave. Again, it's got our webpage, an email if you've got questions, how to make comments on each of the dockets, and also the really important deadline of June 27th. By midnight, you need to submit these comments electronically and also make sure anything that you mail arrives by that date. So we'd like y'all to hit get that in the mailbox, a couple days before so that it doesn't get there past June 27th. So that's really important. Let's see, make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, I think that was it. I just want to make sure y'all know that's going to be available at the back of the room. And again, take advantage of all the different ways we have tonight to make comment. Your comment is so important to the future of these rules. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erin. So we'll turn back over quickly for a couple more questions and then we'll close out tonight. And again, we appreciate things. The one thing I want to point out is up here on the screen, we've talked a lot tonight about partners and partners with the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. We also have another partner that we work closely with when we're talking about those that are most vulnerable, our children, women during their reproductive years, and that is a pediatric environmental health specialty unit. They are resources, colleagues that are health-based colleagues. They can answer questions about epidemiology studies, other types of health studies related to ethylene oxide. We have their contact information up here and we encourage you to reach out to them directly. They are well aware of ethylene oxide and are available to answer questions. So, yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Apparently the EPA knew that this gas was being released from this company. When did you realize it was as bad as it is? And when did you decide to investigate it?
Okay. I'm going to turn that to Caroline and just preface it with, EPA is a science-based organization. And as the science develops and gets stronger, we find out new information. I'm going to turn it to Caroline to give you the timeline for this particular contaminant.
Okay, first of all, let me take a step back. With the Clean Air Act, the way how the national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants work, because ethylene oxide is an air toxic. You heard us mention that earlier tonight. EPA is required to reevaluate hazardous air pollutants every 8 years after that first rule is released. And so sometime that timeline is delayed because of other reasons. But in this particular case, the rule came out, I believe it was 1992. And so 8 years thereafter, which I think we wound up taking a closer look at this particular rule sometime around 2016, I believe it was. And taking that closer look at the rule, we realized that ethylene oxide was more toxic than we initially thought it was. We started looking at the larger sources of where this gas is being utilized in the process. And that was first the chemical manufacturing industry. We moved forward with regulations, and then just looking a little bit closer, we realized that the commercial sterilization industry was also a huge industry that utilized ethylene oxide in the sterilization of medical and dental supplies. And so by doing what we did was send out an information request for data on the emissions as well as control technology at these facilities. We did that nationwide. We got a handful of responses. We went back out again to that industry, and then we QA'd the information that was provided to us to make sure that we had accurate responses on the emissions associated with these operations at each individual commercial sterilizers across the United States. So the data that we have is specific to Sterilization Services of Tennessee. Once we got that information and QA'd it, we modeled those emissions. That's what that chart is, that map is showing over to my left. We came out after we modeled those emissions. First we communicated with the local officials in the health department and our partners over at TDEC. And then from there, we reached out and started mailing out fact sheets to the community to inform. And I will say, our information is only as good as the database that's available to us when it comes to finding addresses to mail this information out. And with that being the case, one of the challenges that we realized existed was that if someone is living in a home, but they are renting it from someone else, we mail that information out, but it probably went to the owner who may live somewhere else and not to the individual that's living in the home, because that's the name and address that will be listed for that property. And so that's a possibility as far as how we could have missed some residents, but we're asking for your assistance to help identify those individuals for us. And if you know anybody that did not receive the information, help us. We're trying our best to get the information out. So if you can take some extra flyers and share it with your neighbors, we would greatly appreciate it.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure I understood the answer to the question that I asked. Based on everything you said, am I to understand that it was 2016 when you found out exactly how bad it was? And after 2016, I never really got a year of when you actually started to investigate.
Okay, I can clarify a little bit more. Okay.
The investigation actually started, what I said was 2016. Then we looked at the largest industry sector that utilized ethylene oxide. It was chemical manufacturing. And so what we did was we actually developed stronger regulations governing that industry. But through additional evaluation, when we looked at ethylene oxide a little bit closer and recognized that there's another large industrial sector that's utilizing ethylene oxide, which is the commercial sterilization industry. We started investigating in 2021. We sent out the very first information collection system. And with that information collection request that went to all of the sterilizers, we only received information from 9. And so we went back out again in I think the first date was it 2020? And then 2021. Yes, 2019 was the first date we went out. And then 2021, we went back out again. And after we got the information in 2021, we did QA/QC and got more up-to-date information in 2022. And so as soon as we got that information, we had that updated emissions information modeled for each one of the facilities. And once we got that information, we started communicating with the local officials and also the health department, the state, as well as our partners with the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry, as well as OSHA. And then from there, fact sheets were sent out to the community because we were trying to make sure we identify the right folks in the community to get the information to them. And so we sent out fact sheets. We came to Memphis in October of last year and held 2 public meetings to explain the risk. And, after we had explained the risk that we had identified, we also shared that EPA was already looking at the regulations to actually put forth stricter rules governing these types of facility. Keep in mind, EPA is a regulatory agency. And so in so doing, we're back here tonight because the rule now has been proposed. And we're taking public comments on that proposed rule, and we need to hear from you. This is your opportunity to make your voices heard. And that's why we're here tonight. And I heard what you said. You want to know the timeline, and that is the timeline. But we're looking, where's the worst case scenario? We looked at the chemical manufacturing industry. Okay, where's the next worst case scenario? Sterilization, commercial sterilization industry. And so we're on that. Now we're looking, what's the next area that we can make some changes in? Under the FIFRA rule, we're taking a look at the labeling for these types of pesticides. So EPA is moving extremely quick, and it doesn't seem that way. Trust me, I hear you. And I know you're living here and you think we're coming and we're leaving. But trust me, we're here because we truly are concerned about you, and we do take this serious, and we want to hear from you to help invoke change.
My second question is, what other diseases other than cancer does EtO cause?
Okay, the question in the room is what other diseases other than cancer does ethylene oxide cause? Peter, are you still with us online?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you answer that question for us, please?
Yes, I can. Workers who have been exposed to extremely high levels for short periods of time, maybe in an industrial or workplace accident or release, they can experience headaches, memory loss, numbness, nausea, and vomiting. There also have been some limited studies looking at pregnant women in the workplace who were exposed to high levels. One study did show that some women had miscarriages. A second study did not find that effect, but this is an area that needs to be further studied to better understand the effect of ethylene oxide on the risk of exposure during pregnancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, what has been done to the sterilization services? They violated. So have they been fined? What has been done to them? And the other thing is, to me, this is like a state of emergency, okay? We declare a state of emergencies for everything else. That's what this is. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I don't know if it came from, I've been here for 58 years. It just seems like there is, with you all being, and I appreciate you all being here, the EPA, it seems like you're a federal branch. And so there should be some things that you could do that speed up the process, or we need something done now. We gotta wait 18 months, we gotta wait 12 months, we're 3 years, we're 4 years into this. And it's just seems to take too long to get anything done when they're being allowed to go on, and I mean, they're killing themselves probably, and us too, just to, you know, make money or whatever it is that they do. So I'm asking you all to at least try and come up with something to speed up the process. We declare a state of emergency for tornadoes and floods and everything. So this is a health emergency. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, thank you for that comment. And let me also say that as far as what has been done to Sterilization Services of Tennessee, you made the statement, they're in violation. They are not in violation based on the current permit that they're holding, and also based on the current regulations that are in place. That is why EPA went back and took a look at facilities of this nature to strengthen its regulations to prevent them from releasing fugitive emissions in the environment. But fugitive emissions were not included in the existing regulations that is on the book. Now that I've said that, let me be clear. Even though the regulatory process is lengthy, this facility does not have to wait until EPA finalizes its rule to move forward and take measures to voluntarily reduce those fugitive emissions. As a good environmental neighbor, this is something that they could start doing today. So I want to be clear, they do not have to wait until this rule is finalized or until, that compliance period is in effect before they take action.
So, thank you, guys. Just want to pause. We have Ms. L who's on the phone or Zoom, and she's had her hand up for a while, and I do want to get to her question. Ms. L, if you could unmute yourself, please. Elle, are you still with us? Do you still have a question? Okay, well, we will turn back to the question in the room. Yes, sir.
You've had your casualties in the room. I'm not sure if everybody that was a casualty, but you have all the data. So what is it that you actually need from us to do? I mean, you already know what the chemical is capable of doing, what it does, when it does what it does. It's like a shooting, and the police show up after the fact. And I'm just concerned. What is it that we have to do? What is it you want from us? If you already have the data and the information, I'm glad you're here, but it's an investigation, right? That's what we're doing, right? Investigate. That's all we do. But you got casualties. So how do you make an investigation when the lady said there's a need? If you already have the data.
Yes, sir. So the comment is, we heard from residents, we've heard the stories. What additional steps or information do we need from this community to take action? And what I would say to that, sir, is we highly encourage you to put that on paper. I understand what you're saying. I completely understand what you're saying. But as employees of EPA, where we are working to identify the numbers and the data, we need to hear from you who live it and experience it, because it is a regulatory process. It has to be official.
Well, after that, if I didn't know what I knew now 20 years ago, what is it again? That's from me.
The background information that we've heard along today, that helps establish baselines of information that's just, it just helps establish that baseline.
That's just the way it does it, right? The water big businesses and government doing together.
Well,
Apparently.
so
This company should have never been able to. Yeah, I mean, you know.
So thank you, sir. Again, this process that we're going through, it's just part of the process to get the information from you all so it can be a part of the record as decisions are made, as the rule is finalized. The 18 months is a proposal, but as Caroline mentioned earlier, if there are comments that, we think this rule needs to be effective within a shorter amount of time, that is the comment that is needed for the record.
Is there any way this can be voted on or in regards to going forward? Seems like voting is a good thing, but we can't just put out here.
Again, the regulatory process, it's comments officially for the record, and that's what we're asking. But thank you for that. I mean, that provides, clarity for a lot of people to understand, we have a process we have to follow. It's a legal process, and it's something that we have to do to make sure that every single comment, every single voice is heard. And they read every single comment.
Not one more thing.
Yes, sir.
Say that, consider all the ones that have been affected by it, now are not able to speak at all.
Speak for them. So, yes, ma'am.
Since, according to the gentleman that was on the phone, you have no idea what other diseases that it may affect or may cause, is there any research in the pipeline now that's happening to find out the effects of EtO?
The question in the room is, since there are a lot of unknowns related to other diseases caused by ethylene oxide, is there research in the pipeline to determine these other causes now? So in the pipeline now, are there? Yes, so I'm gonna turn to Peter again to see if he can answer that and do a follow-up. Peter?
Yes, thank you for that question. The short answer is there is definitely ongoing research on the health effects of ethylene oxide, both cancer and non-cancer. I do not have all the details, but I certainly would, and if there's a way that I could follow up, I'd be happy to do so.
So Peter, the question is, where can they find that information? So we can share the go ahead, Peter.
Okay, one way is we have, you had shared our ATSDR email. We track those and monitor our EtO email box, and I can respond that way. Or I don't know if you have, if you are posting a summary on your website or a newsletter, we can perhaps do it that way as well.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Yes, sir.
My quick question is in the statement. I got here late. Have y'all already approved the database of past and present employees working for this company? Have you already approved the database of all the employees? Since the direct hit is the immediate data that can be used against the company, have y'all approved the current and past employees? Since the doctor stated that it dissipates, those impacts are the people that work there on a daily basis. Have they been approved? Have you gotten a database of prior current employees of the company? And take a statement from them.
I'll speak on behalf of the, sorry, the question in the room was, have we pulled a database, or can we pull a database of previous and current workers at the facility? And under the FIFRA law, which is the pesticide law that protects workers who work with pesticides, the way that proposed interim decision was made is not facility specific. So they look at the types of work that it's done generally, and they look at how long workers work generally, and also bystanders nearby, if you're in school or if you're in daycare, how many hours a day. So in short, kind of the risk assessment that's done under the pesticide program for workers' exposure is generic, so it's not site-specific. Now, I don't know if Shelby County Health Department might be looking into that as far as at the community level or site-specific level, that our federal law under FIFRA doesn't take that kind of data into account.
And the reason I ask that is because we're looking for specific data, for feedback, for the record immediately. I think, Shelby County, whomever can do that, I know you can't do it on the federal level, whomever can do that, if they can get statements from those employees, what better statement from ground zero? So that's the first thing. I just want to throw it out there. The second thing is, you mentioned the most current addresses, okay? If you have one phone call to the mayor, okay, and get him to involve Memphis Light Gas and Water, I guarantee you, Memphis Light Gas and Water has all the most current data. If their light came on today, the television came on today, they have their address.
Thank you, absolutely.
I get
Noted.
information in the mail all the time from Memphis Light Gas and Water. This is real time. We talk about real time activity. One call to the mayor, he makes a call to the new president of the MLGW. They put it into a database that these addresses in this circle, we need a letter to go out. That letter should state, one, your Q&As, two, at the bottom of the letter, where this response should go. Since this is city money, we're paying the taxes for it anyway, why not put a return address in that? Okay, and this can be done. Now you're talking about the impact. You give them the information in the envelope. You give them paperwork to write in whatever their comments are, and a story of somebody in their family that possibly died within whatever period of years. Okay, prompt them. This is what I'd like to know about your situation. This here could be done within a week. You would have thousands of responses back. Now we talking about real. I've dealt with marketing all my life. If we get them this to them, put the information in there, a return address envelope, where a stamp is not necessary, now you can actually get the responses you need and the amount of information you need quickly.
Okay, so we are appreciative of everyone who's joined us tonight. We have a couple more questions online that I want to hit real quick, and then we want to be respectful of everyone's time. Really, the questions that are remaining online are to the dissipation comment, the ethylene oxide dissipating quickly. We heard you loud and clear that language is confusing, the way it's used, and that we need to make sure that we are clear in how we characterize short-term versus long-term impacts to the body. So we hear that, and we will make sure that we adjust that. So that was really the majority. One question from Kathy Robinson: are there hard recommendations or standards that could be proposed that will protect this community from an administration that is not strong on environmental protections? If so, what are those recommendations? As we mentioned earlier, new administrations can come and propose changes to existing rules. So what's important with that process, again, here we go back to process, is there will always be a public comment period. And that is the opportunity to say, this rule should change, this rule should stay the same, this rule should be modified to whatever. That is the opportunity to do so. Yes, and also just to make sure that it's consistent with the law, in this case, the Clean Air Act or FIFRA or something like that. Okay. So we're going to take one more question in the room before we wrap up. And again, we sincerely appreciate your participation. Yes. I thought you were trying to get some, just stand up to get some.
My question is there any information or data on how to fix our ship?
The question in the room is there any information or data on how ethylene oxide affects children? And as Caroline mentioned earlier, children breathe. Okay, Caroline wants to answer that, so I will pass it to her.
The question was, how does ethylene oxide affect children? And this is what I will say. We know that children's bodies are continuously developing. And ethylene oxide is really, it's a cancer causing exposure. And so therefore it's mutagenic. And so therefore it can impact a child's DNA as they continue to develop. Not only that, I will say, and I don't know that this was in any of the information that we shared, when we said that we learned that ethylene oxide was more toxic than we originally thought it was, and why we made our way to Memphis, Tennessee, is simply because what we learned is that ethylene oxide is 60 times more toxic in children than we had originally known, and 30 times more toxic in adults. And so there's not a good message that we're bringing, but we have to inform you. And we're making strides. We are a regulatory agency to regulate this industry much tighter. But at the same time, we need your comments on this rule. We can't do it by ourselves. If you want this rule to take effect quicker, say that. So we need your input on the rule. And sir, I hope I answered your question. Thank you. We're going to reach out.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Just speak a little louder.
I just wanted to speak to the fact that I've been listening, and there were a lot of things spoken about what's going on right now and what happened in the past. To my knowledge, the Riverside community and Mallory Heights community is the affected community right now that we know of, and some parts of Whitehaven maybe as well. So moving forward, there are a lot of community centers, schools, restaurants, and places where people work, all in this outline that y'all have here. And preventative measures as far as moving forward. Okay, let's say we get what we want today. They can pass the rule and they can say yes today. Let's say they do it today and they change everything tomorrow. What does that gonna look like 30 years from now? I'm 37 in August, hopefully. And I don't know, because I have a child who's 8. And there are other people here who have small children and grandchildren as well. So I would like to know what their future would look like. Like, is it gonna be an EPA for them as well? What if there's another factory that says they wanna come in and they wanna also do damage to the community as well? It's like, this has always been a fight for this area. For some reason, unbeknownst to us, it's always been somebody wanting to encroach in on our health, our safety, and other things that make a community thrive. So, like, what public officials will be involved in this type of thing, and will they stay involved? And what would it look like with you guys and y'all involvement in the future? Like, how long are we gonna have to keep doing this? Riverside, I know, was built in the early 40s, late 30s. So right after World War II, a community pops up in a nice area. It's right off the river banks. It's a lot of thriving, communities and, businesses in the community that have been here for a long time. And like the lady said earlier, those property values are decreasing, not because solely to people neglecting their properties, it's because their health is, a concern. So they might take that more seriously than keeping their yard cut, cleaning their gutters, and doing other things that could keep a house or a property in living condition. So it's like, moving forward, will there be a Riverside and Mallory Heights community if we keep on this same thing? It's always something now. So like, and that's my question, like what's gonna happen 20 years from now, 30 years from now? We're gonna have this same meeting again with another company who says, hey, I wanna come in and I also want to wreak havoc.
I missed your name.
My name is Alicia.
Miss Alicia, thank you first of all for asking that question. And the question that Miss Alicia asked really is centered around zoning. And I encourage you your vote matters, to speak with your elected officials and let them know you don't want any more industry in this area. Your vote carries a lot of power. Everyone in this room vote carries a lot of power. We cannot, at the EPA, limit or prevent another facility from coming into this area. But you having those conversations with your elected officials and your zoning board and pushing that envelope is what's going to prevent that from happening. But thank you for raising the question this afternoon.
Thank you all. I mean, you all deserve a round of applause, number one, for, hanging in there with us until 9:31, but also just receiving this information. And we understand it's a tough conversation. It is a tough conversation, but it's important for us that you have the information to make informed decisions and informed comments. It's frustrating. It is annoying, and it seems like we're talking in circles, but we really want to give you the information to make informed decisions. We are here to answer questions. We will make ourselves available. If I have business cards, you can always reach out to me. Caroline, you can call, you can email with your questions, and we will be here and we will respond. We received a lot of feedback this evening. We received a lot of feedback earlier. We received a lot of support offers, and we will take you up on that. We will take everybody up on their support to be boots on the ground, to help us reach the individuals that could not be here today. So we have yes, ma'am, thank you. The question in the room is, what is the consequence for industry that does not fall into compliance by the deadline? And that is when we turn to our colleagues with Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Division to follow up on that non-compliance.
That can often look like a pretty hefty fee for compliance for facilities that don't come into compliance. I've worked with our Clean Air Act penalty policy, and it's not pretty. So there is a strong financial incentive for them to not fall on the wrong side of EPA.
So is inspector, who inspector, sometimes, you know somebody who will say, okay, we're got this right away till this moment happens. So, that's just the way things operate. Things operate. Things operate. Are they friends? Are they really serious about
Like they said, you have to fail with themselves at being that. Cause it's easy for them to go over there and just, what's about to take place? Always a warning to come. You know, I'm just warning.
Okay, so the question in the room is, who's holding the inspectors accountable for inspecting these facilities? Caroline, do you want to take that one?
Yes. Thank you for that question. And, the first agency to conduct inspections and oversee inspections would be Shelby County. The next agency, because Shelby County has delegation of authority from the state of Tennessee to implement these regulations. Then it falls in EPA's lap as an oversight agency. And I am very certain that, I'm not in the enforcement program. I once started my career in the enforcement program, and I find a number of industries. But I will say that our enforcement division is very serious about following up on non-compliance matters. And trust me when I tell you, the penalties that we calculate and put on the table to settle a case, companies are more compelled to comply with the rule as to not comply based on federal calculations of penalties. So what did I just say? Is that EPA, this is a new rule that's being proposed, more stricter rule for this industry. EPA is looking at this industry sector very close. And so when that compliance date come into play, EPA will probably be working hand in hand with Memphis, Shelby County in an oversight role looking at this facility.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Thank you all. You all deserve a round of applause. Pastor Fuller, thank you. Thank you, Bloomfield Baptist Church, and we will all see you again.
Now, you guys, can you smile